by the rivers of Babylon. Yeah, we sat down and we cried when we remembered Jerusalem. We were sick, Lord, near to dying. Oh,
Shalom, shalom, family. Welcome to another Tanakh review. My name is Zurishaddai, one of the teachers of congregation BINAH CHOKMAH, located in the Red Hook section of Brooklyn, New York. Our address is 382 Hamilton Avenue, Brooklyn, New York, 11231. Thanking the creator of heaven and earth for all things and everything, food, life, clothing, and shelter. Thanking the creator for being who he is, the one who has the whole world in his hand and controls all the world. We give him thanks. His name is Yehudah, and we thank him for all things and everything. Hallelujah. Giving glory to the Most High God, saying Shabbat Shalom to everyone. When this is aired, it's going to be the Shabbat. So saying Shabbat Shalom to all of you. And I pray that the Most High God, creator of heaven and earth, will continue to be with all of you. For all of you that are watching this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're a new listener. Also, if you're a recurring listener and you're looking at this video, don't forget to press the like button, and also don't forget to share with those that might need some words of wisdom and some understanding. Thanking the creator of heaven and earth once again. Thanking him for my family and all my loved ones, for all teachers. Also praying that the Most High God will continue to be with those who are ailing, continue to be with Chief Eleazar Ben Levi, Yisrael, that the Most High God will bless him and keep him and heal him, that the Most High be with all those, Seren Yaakov also, that the Most High God would heal him and hear and answer the supplications of his family. Also that the Creator continue to be with all those elders, Gavera Orah, Gavera Yehudah, and all the elders who need prayer at this time. Continue to be with Gavera Tereya, and also continue to heal her. So at this time, I'm going to pass it right along to one of my teachers. And if I forgot anyone, please send us names so that we could also pray for them. Maybe we could start a segment like that. But leave the names in the comments of those that need prayer, and maybe Nazik will look at them and say an individual prayer for each one of them. So, like I said, we're gonna move straight ahead, and I'm gonna pass the mic over to one of my teachers and one of my mentors, even Nazik, Zurishaddai Ben Yehudah. How are you, Nazik?
Great, Baruch Hashem. First of all, I'd like to give praises to the Supreme Eternal Universe, God of my forefathers, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob. Due respect to the platform I'm on, D.C.B. platform, the spiritual leader, Chief Prince Yariel Ben Yasaska, to the Holy Chief Uziel, to the Princess Chief, the Rabbinate, the Kohanim, the Maureen, brothers and sisters, I greet you all in the time of my forefathers. Shalom Aleichem, early Shabbat Shalom, and also, a happy Hanukkah, a good Hanukkah in a sense, because just the season we in. I know most of y'all, when y'all see this, you be deep into Hanukkah already, into the Hanukkah season. And also, my compliments go out to Chief Abdiel for doing, a magnanimous job on his dissertation. I'd like to first off say, Adonai Septadi Takupi Agi Tilateaka, O Lord, that my lips and my mouth should declare thy praise. Last week, we'll be going over this particular week, we'll be going over the portion in the book called YAH, which means and he settled and he dwelled. All right. Which has a bunch of subject matters in it that's I know I'm not going to get to, and in reality, very few teachers, get enough time. There's always going to be something they could bring out in the particular portion. But for those that might want to read and take their time and give it some serious thought, as it starts from Genesis, the 37th chapter, first verse, and it goes all the way to the 40th chapter, the 23rd verse. The haftarah that goes along with it, which is the substitute for a sidra, is the book of Amos, and it starts from the 2nd chapter, the 6th verse, and it goes to the 3rd chapter, 8th verse. And then what goes along after that, the substitute for that, would be the Psalms 112, and that's why I'll be talking on the Psalms 112. Last week we left off with last week's portion, and one of the issues is, besides talking about the leadership of the book of the descendants of Esau, we read about the death of Isaac, and we know that when we read about the death of Isaac and stuff like that, we read about how old Isaac was. That's how it ends off, and that he was gathered, in the 29th verse of the 35th chapter, it says, and Nazik expired and died and was gathered unto his people, old and full of days. And Esau and Jacob, his son, buried him. So Isaac himself, interesting thing when you say full of days, that means he lived each and every moment. He lived longer than any other patriarchs. But just to focus on it, that it's interesting that when we look at that verse, we find, interesting is that you hear that it says, and Esau and Jacob, his son, buried him. So Esau's name is mentioned first, as opposed to his brother Jacob. And so much for the stereotype as opposed to the archetype, because Esau did say in his heart, as we read earlier, that mourning for my father's at hand, and then he would slay his brother Jacob. But he never did that. And like I said, concerning Abraham and death, when Ishmael and Isaac got together, there's always some talk going on at a burial. And I'm sure there was plenty of talk going on between Esau and Jacob at the burial of Isaac. And we know greatly that Esau did everything in his power to please his father. Anything he discovered that was amiss, considering his wives, he had to discover that. It's obvious he never was told that, and he tried to rectify that. But the descendants we had problems with. So that's another story. Now I know it's a lot of commentaries on both sides, more so on the stereotype of Esau as opposed to the actual archetype of the individual character. Then now we go into another area, and here it is that we just left not too long ago that Dinah had already been raped. And like I said before, you have the first case that's recorded in scriptures, where we know who was the victim and we know who was the perpetrator. And he's the only one, Jacob's the only one that had the daughter. Can you imagine if the other patriarchs had daughters, who would they marry? How their marriage would go? So now you had Dinah, and she went to see the daughters of the land, and she was forced into a situation. And we know that it turned to be tragic in the end for the people of Shalom. So Jacob himself, now after the incidents of Dinah, and you read about the descendants of Esau, you have that he's getting ready to settle. And I like to go into the beginning of this particular portion just a little bit, not to belabor it too much, but it's a lot of interesting things that goes on here. one of the things it says in the 37th chapter, and starting from the 37th chapter, the first verse, and Jacob dwelt in the land of his father's sojourning, in the land of Canaan. Now, I'd like to stop there just for a moment. I'm trying not to be too loquacious and speaking over abundantly about this subject. But if Abraham sojourned, that means he's here today, might be someplace tomorrow. But it's not really, he considered a rest stop, a home. If Isaac sojourned, here today, someplace tomorrow, I don't consider his home. Then how would Jacob think now that he deserved to settle down? Because he figured maybe could it be that he figured all his troubles were behind him? He done got over the Esau situation. He got away. He got a wife. He wound up running out of Israel, running to Aram, running out of Aram. Things were cool with his father-in-law at the final end, and then running it back into Esau. Then next thing you know, his daughter's raped after a period of time, and then he had to exodus out of Shechem, where he brought a parcel of land. So now he decided that everything's so smooth, I'm all right. Let me settle down and call this a home. That seems kind of bizarre. So you could I'd like to hear some thoughts concerning that matter. Before I forget, I'd like to address a statement from a sister about Isaac allowing Jacob to go to get a wife with nothing. And one of the statements was that could have been that he was angry because he was deceived. Well, Isaac wasn't that kind of person. So that, from what we know and what we see about it. And Isaac was able to give him a blessing after he was deceived, and that was the blessing of Abraham. So other commentaries, tradition says he did have stuff, and then stuff happened on the way before he got a chance to cross over. But when he did cross over, he had nothing. Hence the reason for his particular prayer or petition or vow to the Most High God. So you can fill in the gaps the way you like to fill it in, but he's on the run. And I'm sure Isaac, knowing that he's going there, his mother know he's going there to get a wife, would not send him empty. So perhaps something happened on the way. But we don't have anything. And when I normally speak out the portion, I try to stick with the plain text as opposed to reading to other commentaries and traditions on a regular. Because the problem is with most people that I encounter over a period of time is that they listen to the commentaries or say sages or rabbis without actually looking into the text themselves. I know for myself, not that I'm no great sage or anything like that, that when I do these talks, I can't express everything I know within a time limit. Not that I might, that I don't know certain areas that may occur within certain verses, but the time don't allow it. So the same thing when we have some of the quotes and those that study and follow mostly a traditional rabbinic text or sages, comments on certain things. Everybody didn't make it to have their stuff written down. And if we study the history, the man, Rabbi Yehudah, they called it Hanasi, he himself gathered what he could gather for his Mishnah. He gathered what he could gather, the most popular, the most predominant viewpoints on a lot of topics. So I try to deal with what's there first and then allow people to discuss it and look at other viewpoints. All right, so one, he's settling where his forefathers never settled in the land. So that's one thing to just to consider. And then it opens up. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brethren, being still a lad, even with the sons of Bilhah and with the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. Joseph brought evil report of them unto their father. Now, I'm only going to read a few verses in this, and then I'm going to skip on by. But what is interesting is that he's with the handmaids' children, the four children that the handmaids had, because they had two children apiece, and that the order is given for Bilhah, and then Zilpah in that particular order. Now we know Bilhah kids would have been older than Zilpah kid in the beginning anyway. But the thing was that Bilhah belongs to Rachel at first, and Zilpah was part of Leah's, handmaid. What's interesting to know is that he was with those people as opposed to the rest of the brothers, and he's 17. Now, doing the math, these guys are not much older than him. So, but they definitely are older than him, only a few years older than him. And when we look at who he's with, it used the word, 8, Aleph, Tav, first letter and last letter. You can read a whole lot of stuff into that phrase, in those particular letters, the word et. Sometimes used as a direct object in Hebrew, but it also means like with, W-I-T-H. So, and also can means as an aid or a helper in that sense, that with in the sense like an aid or a helper. So that, and most times we would think of Joseph being a supervisor, but if we look at the text carefully, it looks more like an assistant to them. And he's watching, and he brings about an evil report concerning them to the father. But just want to bring a couple more things up before I move on. It said, now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. And when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him and could not speak peaceably unto him. Important things, a lot of commentaries on what this meant, that you could not speak peacefully unto somebody. For me, I'll share my view, one view. I'm gonna share a couple other perspectives in it. One view, which is the high road. If you don't have anything good to say about somebody, don't say anything. You know, going on 7, between 6 and 7 years older. Now, he didn't tell them. I'm sure Jacob love was that hopefully I'll repeat that because I look like something happened to the machine. All right. Binyamin at this time, the least age he could be at that particular time is 10 years old when Joseph is 7. All right. You know, that's that 10 years, you know, 10 years old, Joseph 17. So these are some questions that, you know, bear some going back over. And then another view about speaking peacefully, some people say, okay, I'm gonna be frank with you. I'm gonna tell you what's really in my mind, what's on my heart. So could it be, because some commentators believe that that's what it might been, that I'm gonna tell you straight out what I think about you. I'm not gonna cut any corners. So you talk harsh, belittling, you know what I mean, insulting, you know, that kind of thing. So could it be, I can't speak peacefully to you, but I sure enough speak hard about you. Could it be that? So these are some things to consider, various areas in there. And then the last thing I want to bring up before I zip past all this here is that, well, the code of many colors is, you know, it's called stripe code, really, Pasim. And there's a lot of acronyms behind that, but I'm not going to deal with that at this particular time. All right. It said in the 5th verse, it says, on the 37th chapter, and Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. And he said unto them, Here I pray you this dream which I dreamed. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose, and also stood upright. And behold, your sheaves came around about and bowed down to my sheaf. And his brethren said to him, Shalt thou indeed reign over us? Or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet the more for his dream and for his words. And he dreamt yet another dream and told it to his brethren and said, Behold, I have dreamt a dream, yet a dream. Behold, I have dreamt yet a dream. And behold, the sun and the moon and 11 stars bowed down to me. And he told it to his father and to his brethren. And his father rebuked him and said unto him, What is this dream that thou hast dreamt? Shall I and thy mother and thy brothers indeed come to bow down to thee to the earth? And his brethren envied him, but his father kept the saying in mind. All right. So now, one of the things I like to bring out before I just skip past that, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of other stuff, you know, in this, but so much stuff, you know, to be elaborated on it. But one, Joseph had 3 dreams, not just 2, 3. Now, if the brothers hate you for the coat and couldn't speak peacefully to you, because they seen that your father loved you, that their father loved you more than them, and you tell them a dream, and they say they hate you even more, then why would you say, you know what I mean, please listen to my dream? So now you got to figure out, was they really outwardly showing the hate, or they was really holding it tight? Because if somebody hate me right out, I'm gonna try to avoid them. I know they really hate me, especially when I'm younger than them, and perhaps not as strong as them. So I'm gonna try to avoid them. And one of the things, and I want you to bear this in mind as we, you know, go through the end of the story, which I might be skipping through a lot of stuff. But one of the things is that they listen and they interpret it. And then the next dream we read about is, we first read about the sheaves. We heard about one dream. We don't know what that dream was. That's why it says 3 dreams. One dream, we don't know what that was. So he wants them to listen to the second dream. They hate you for the father's coat and his favoritism. They hate you for a dream that we don't know what you said in that first dream. And now we got this dream of the sheaves that you telling them about. They hate you even more. And now you're gonna bring your father in on a dream and tell it before them, and they envy you. Now, I mean, they went past the hate to the envy, even stronger, more intense, more concerning that. And the father answered, but he considered the dream. So there's a lot of things that's going on here, and I'm gonna get back to that. Hopefully I don't forget. Just get past that, because it's related to the end of the story, pretty much. And one of the things that you got to think about in this area is that if Yosef, the brothers hate him so bad, why would they even entertain the dream? Why would Yosef even talk to him? And how could they even interpret it? And the dreams and stuff in ancient times, everybody believed dreams is a form of communication one way or the other. Sometime in the Apocrypha, it says dream comes from a multitude of negotiation. A dream is a reason why our prophets had visions as opposed to dreams. Dreams is not, you can't depend on a dream 100%. Now, we have some unique dreams. One of the unique dreams is that how did God come to Laban, and tell him not to hurt Jacob, and Laban know that's Jacob's God, somebody he don't pray to, and decide to respect that. That's a bizarre situation, but the Creator could do all kind of stuff. How is it that God come to Abimelech, the first man we read about to have a dream in scriptures, and he know automatically communicating with God in his dream and fear God that much and say, I'm looking for, even if you're a God, not necessarily God I worship, but you the God of this guy here, Abraham, are you a God of integrity? Because he said, will you slay a righteous people? In the integrity of my heart, I took her. So even Abimelech, a Philistine looking for the Creator, and said, if you really are God, you really the creator of all mankind, then I got to know. It ain't just Abraham talking about, will you save the city for 10 righteous? Abimelech saying, will you slay a righteous people? So evidently he had much more than 10 that he could speak on in that sense. So in a dream, and those that have dreams, one of the interesting things about a dream is that you could change the dream in your dream. You can control your dream. You could say, oh, look like this ain't going right. Let me turn it around, empower myself, or eradicate that. So dreams itself, if you just have a regular dream, that usually be a bunch of falsehood, and you could change it around and turn it around in your mind. Now, I know about all the other things about dreams that people talk about, but I'm just saying basically when a person have a dream and you dream something ain't going right, you say, I know this can't be real. This got to be a dream. You better snap up out of this. So this is something about dreams. All right, so much for that area. And I'd like to point out some things in these two dreams that we do know about. One, with the sheaves, we're not given a number. In the second dream, we're given a number, 11 stars and the sun and the moon. Now, Joseph could identify himself in the second dream when he's talking about the dream of the sheaves with the wheat. He identified himself as being still wheat. In the second dream, you got 11 stars and the sun and the moon, but we have no identification of who Joseph is. All we have is that they bound to Joseph. So some will say, no man really know which star is theirs. So how did the sons know that they was one of them stars? How did Jacob know that the sun was referring to him? How did they know that the moon was referring to Joseph's mother? How did they understand that? And that's his dream. Those are some things to consider. All right, so I'm just gonna move past all that. We got another episode where Judah goes off after they sell Joseph into Egypt. We know he goes his way down to Egypt. So after he got sold into Egypt, we know what happened there. He wound up, being presumed dead by his father. And what's interesting is that his father refused to be comforted when they thought Joseph was dead. So we know that's that part of the story. As we go further on, we know that Judah went down from his brothers after that in the 38th chapter, and he had 3 sons. He had a wife. Wife died. 2 sons died, and they had he picked a wife for his son, which was named Tamar, and he wound up having a relationship with Tamar. Just fast forwarding through the story. But what's interesting to consider is that he made a bargain that when the other son got old enough, the third son get old enough, he'll give it to other, raise up seed for the brother that died. And he didn't do that. His wife died. After a period of time, he goes off to shear sheep, and she knew that Yehudah had delayed somewhat. Now, how long a delay that made it warranted for her to do what she do, that's another episode. But what the key factor is that he was sidetracked from one job to do another job. One of the things that's interesting is that she appeared to be, a Kadesha or a harlot, which they really 2 different things. But the first time, he assumed to be a harlot, but later on, we find the term Kadesha, which is a little subtlety because the word Kadesha got the short, the root word of some kind of sanctity. And she, wore a veil, hid her face. Long story short, Judah didn't have nothing to pay her, so he gave her a ring, a signet ring, a bracelet, and a staff, and she got pregnant. And when she got pregnant, the word got back to Yehudah, and Yehudah got the word that your daughter-in-law played the harlot, and she's with child. He said, burn her up. No investigation, no nothing. Said, take her out and let her be burned. So now Yehudah's hanging out with Canaanites. She's not hanging out with his brothers now. This is an episode where Joseph is sold off into Egypt, going through a situation, and here Yehudah, he's off to someplace else. Jacob already upset. So now we got to see a picture going, that's painted with the family. And then what's interesting is that as we look at the picture of the family, pretty much, what I like is the nobility, the piety of Tamar. And then when I say the piety and nobility is one thing. The piety is not always in every instance of a person's life. But the piety and nobility is that she was on her way to the stake to get burned. And she sent by somebody, whoever this anonymous individual was, to her father-in-law, Yehudah, those items that Yehudah had left, and said, by the man who these belong to, am I with child? Yehudah never even asked her, who you mess with? Well, I know you're pregnant. Not even investigating, not even looking for somebody to violate it. So there's something going on here. You're supposed to be for so-and-so. How does somebody else, hook up with you? So there's a lot of questions. If he thought she did that, why didn't he also say, look, I need to find out who you was messing with? Those are some things to think about. And then if we go further into the situation there, that Yehudah look at that and he admits, by saying, she is more righteous than I. Now, how fast that servant brought it to Yehudah to save her when she's on her way to get burned, I have no idea. But one thing for sure, she didn't give up her name. And she depended on his integrity to admit what he did was wrong. Far as being, co-spirator in that situation, I should say. And he states she's more righteous than I, that in a matter that I didn't give her my son Shelah. Only in that, and he said he never knew her again. And he had 2 sons. He lost 2 sons, but he got 2 sons. So that's one of the things I'm talking about. Sometimes the Creator make the crooked path straight. Now we got on the other side with Yosef. He goes down to Egypt. And what's interesting when he goes down to Egypt in the 39th chapter, I'm sorry, I'm taking a little bit long, but it'll be a little bit longer than I did last time. And it said, all right, when he's got in the 39th chapter, I said, the second verse, because he was sold into a guy named Potiphar. And it said, and the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. And his master saw the Lord was with him, and that the Lord had made all that he did prosper in his hand. He's already sold into into Egypt to this the guy named Potiphar, who's they say, his character, his occupation, pretty much, he's a top man. They call him Tsar. Everybody he's going to be around pretty much from this point be Tsar, which is almost like, like a prince, but it's, a quiet title. It's not a thing of nobility. And he goes in his house. And what's interesting is that he is successful, God's with him, and yet the master of the house see that God is with Joseph and let Joseph, take care of everything, and left everything under his hand. So he freed him up from a lot of stuff. But what we find is that Joseph actually was the first individual in the 39th chapter, starting near the end of the 6th verse. It said, and Joseph was a beautiful form and fair to look upon. He's Joseph is the first individual, male, that was ever called handsome. And when you say handsome, I don't mean he was better looking than Adam. But I don't mean he's better looking maybe than the next individual. But in his environment, taken out of his normal habitat, because diamonds amongst diamonds, just either a bigger diamond or you're a smaller diamond. But when you're taking a diamond out and bring it amongst, say, pearls or some other metal, you're going to stand out. But in order to say that somebody is beautiful, you got to relate it to something other than itself, such as Adam being made by the Creator. So he was perfect in every form. Kawa is made, was built by the Creator. So she's perfect in every form. Those that seen and live long enough to see Kawa, Adam's wife Eve, or see Adam, which is the last guy we know on the planet to see Adam, according to the scriptures I said before, was Lamech. They knew what beauty looked like. And they knew what perfection looked like. So anybody that would fit close to that mold would have, be described as such. We know the Greeks was, concerned about beauty, physical, but here it is. This first man is the beautiful down in Egypt. When we find out that the fast go push it just a little bit faster, is that he goes in the Potiphar's house. His wife, Potiphar's wife, his master's wife, was after him consistently, and she come on daily and daily because of it, the way he looked and his success. Usually, women go after a man if he got looks, and then also his status. So, of being an accomplished individual. So here's a servant that's in a situation where he's put in a high position of status amongst his master, where he's the second guy in charge in the house of his master, other than his master. And he runs everything. And the wife was interested in him. Mind you now, Joseph was, if we take any chronological order behind that, he's 17 young man, a 17-year-old young man. According to our law, you're not even considered eligible for war until you're 20. So he's not even a war material, pretty much, according to the standards of the book. Even if he was big, even if he was robust, according to looking later on, you had to be 20 to be eligible to go to war and able to fight at that. So he's about 17 years old, and you figure if he stayed in his master's house, basically a season. And so he's pretty much a young man, a young lad, and he's successful. God is with him, but what's unique is that the master see that God's with him. And how would the master know if God's with Joseph? Not because he could see God directly, or God spoke to him, sound with him, or he see that Joseph is so extra pious, but if everything he put his hand to was successful, and mind you, he's picking up jobs and skills and doing work that he possibly didn't do in his father's house. As we know later on, our major job in the land of Canaan was being shepherds. That was our major job. But he's handling things in business, commerce, all kind of stuff, and anything that his master put before him, he was successful in it, and he wondered how this guy had this kind of skill and wound up being a slave. So only explanation is God is working with him, but Joseph don't see that. Then when the woman tried to seduce him, and he flee and left his coat, and he's put in, and the master put him in jail on some false charges that the woman, alleged. And the only reason we know it's a false charge because we're reading about it, but it's alleged, this false charge. Now, had the master believed in them days and time that Joseph actually did what he did, try to attempt rape, that'd have been a death penalty. Not even, even in our law, that'd have been a death penalty. So here it is that the individual, had to believe that this don't seem like Joseph. For some reason, so he decided to put him in prison. Now, mind you, back then in those days, when you go to jail, go to prison, and like I said before, there's no 25, most of you in the life, but to somebody to think about you. And a lot of people didn't have prisons, but they had, and if they had a prison and you was wealthy enough to have a prison, you was under some big noble house in there as a slave, and they had the power of life and death over you. There's no such thing as prison rights. So now Joseph goes into prison, and a similar thing happened. God was with him, and God caused him to find favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. So the keeper of the prison left everything under Joseph's hands. And we know that after he left everything in Joseph's hands, he was successful, doing a job in a different area that he never had experience in, and being successful. Now, mind you, these is like we would say the equivalent today, the federal penitentiary, as opposed to the regular blue collar crimes, supposed to be the white collar crimes, so to speak. But yet, no matter what kind of crime you did in ancient times, if you ever went to prison, you was there with no rights. Until somebody decided to think about you or consider you. So he was living well. God was looking out for him when he was sold through slavery, because when the people brought him down, they had spices and bombs, so fragrant. So it wasn't a sloppy looking caravan that was taking him down, or a smelly caravan bringing him down. And also, he goes into get brought and sold to a prestigious individual. And then from a prestigious individual, he winds up going to prison, and then he get a prestigious status in prison, if it's such a thing as that, being in prison. A golden cage is still a cage, just the same. And yet now we come to another episode where somebody else is being thrown in prison. And these is the baker and the butler. The Pharaoh's top baker, or some books would say the cupbearer. Top baker, and the butler, they'll say the cupbearer. The guy that hands the wine. And so it was that we would say butler in that sense, but he's actually the cupbearer, because he would taste the wine or pour the wine for the kings of ancient times. So you're either a wine taster or you're pouring the wine. We know that we have a prominent guy in our history that was the cup bearer for the king, who was Nehemiah. That was his job, in Persia, during the Babylonian captivity, during the transition from the Babylonian captivity. That was his job as a cupbearer, a prominent prophet such as Nehemiah. So these are prestigious guys that's thrown in prison because they upset Pharaoh. There's a lot of commentaries on that, what each one did. So they're looking sad. Now, mind you, if we look in, we find out from the next portion that Joseph was actually spent a minimum of 12 years in prison. Imagine that, 12 years. If he stayed at his master's house this season, he probably only did 1 year, a season, and he was successful in that first season. And that's all it took for him to get thrown into a prison. So he was in his master's house for only 1 season, but basically a year, and we give or take. And he's in prison when these guys come around and get thrown in there for approximately 10 years. And so they had it, they're looking sad. So who don't look sad when you go to prison? That's number one. That's something to think about. You're in prison, but nobody want to be there, including Joseph. You don't want to be there, as we find later on. And so he looked at their countenance and wanted to find out what's wrong with them. You got a problem, but Joseph disregarded his problem and said, look, their problem looked worse than mine. So I'm saying that and focus on that point because I said I would get back to the brothers hating when they saw their father give him a coat. They hating when the father gave him a coat, they hated him and they couldn't speak peacefully to him. Then now he had a dream. We don't know what's going on with that first dream, but the second dream we know with the sheaves. So, so the first dream, they hated him even more. The next dream that they told about the sheep, he hated them more. And the third dream with the sun, the moon, and the stars, they envied him even more. Now, and they got so far that it was such a buildup that they wanted to kill him. So, and what's interesting is that if somebody don't like you, why would you communicate? So that shows that Joseph was 17. He was naive, very naive. One, if the woman's coming at you every day consistently, and then she gets you trapped off alone, why you allow yourself to be in that position? If your brothers is hating you, they're not disguising their looks or anything like that, why is it that you still trying, to communicate with them? And when you had to say, pretty much, please listen to my dream, you had to really solicit them in a humble fashion to listen to your dream. And you can't see these guys, can't stand you. And you're in prison where everybody's there with a problem in a story. And yet, you see these guys there, the first time you come into a situation that's bad, everybody gonna have the bad look. So that's something. But this look was so different that this shows that he started to mature somewhat. Because now, where he could not spot anxiety, misery, emotional, deficit inside of a individual, which such of us his brothers, who he should have known, who he known all their life, or his life rather, that strangers, he could recognize a problem in their face other than the situation they're in. So he wasn't looking at the situation they're in prison. He said, the look on their face had to be something a lot different than the situation of just being in prison. And these are prominent guys, men of status. So he interpreted the dream, and for the butler, as most books translate as the butler, and it was favorable. And so when the baker seen that the butler had a favorable dream, he wanted to talk about his dream, because now he trying to keep hope alive for him. And we know that actually what's unique about it, that the baker, we know automatically the baker dream was that he was going to die in 3 days. So one guy going to be restored, one guy going to be hanged in 3 days. When we look into the dream, which I'm not going to go into now, just for the sake of time, is that the butler was actually doing his job. The baker was not doing his job. That's just something to consider in the dreams that they bring out, And then it's always a question about the days. That's, how do you know it's only going to be 3 days when when that the analogy of the first dreams that he told to his brothers, and then later on to his brothers and his father, that he didn't say what time or how long the time would be or what time it would be. So those are something to think about. Now, there's always commentaries on those things, but I like to to focus on it as we go through it. And when we get into the very end of this portion here, another thing I like to bring out is that Joseph himself, when you interpret we go into the 40th chapter, and that's where we're going to be ending at the 40th chapter, the 15th verse. It says, and Joseph replied after he gave it okay, we need to go back a little bit further. After he interpreted the butler's dream in the 14th verse of the 40th chapter, it says, but have me in thy remembrance when it shall be well with thee, and show kindness, I pray thee, unto me, and make mention of me unto Pharaoh, and bring me out of this house, for indeed I was stolen away out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also have I done nothing that they should put me into the dungeon. So, hence, when you was put in prison in ancient times, unless somebody think about you, consider you, you was there for life. And what's ironic, God, Joseph maturing to read faces, read problems, take a genuine divine concern in the next individual, but yet he depend on man to remember him and not God. That's that. So that make you think about that. Why should I depend on a butler and I'm helping him out? Why not pray to God to help get me out of this situation? Since God's with me all the time, but everybody can see God is with him. Everybody can see that God's working through him. Everybody, he can recognize that he's successful in doing things that he never had any experience in and being prosperous, but yet he don't see that. Sometimes we don't see God working in our life because other people might see it, but we may not see it. And you got to ask, why I don't see God working in my life at times, if you know that an atrocity was done against you. And you notice that he thought he was stolen out the land of the Hebrews. He didn't know his brothers actually sold them to the merchants. He never seen his brothers again when they was pulling them out. When the merchants pulled them out, his brothers, he didn't see them. So all he know was some guys came by, snatched him up for free, and took him on there. That's why he said he was kidnapped, stolen out the land of the Hebrews. And that's something to say. He called this the land of the Hebrews, but yet the Canaanites is there. So what is he saying? He already recognized that the promise that was given to his father Yaakov, that this is going to be their land, they just have not really been able to really, claim the whole territories of what was promising to Abraham, passed on to Isaac, and passed on to Yaakov. But he called it the land of the Hebrews. Now, we know we got other areas where people talk about the Hyksos and stuff like that, the Shemitic people, shepherd kings and stuff like that at that area. But I just like to know, we never read in the scriptures, at the time, it was called the land of the Hebrews at all. So that's something a novel to pay attention to. So, and what's interesting about this particular portion, you got 7 dreams enumerated in there. 3 that Joseph had, 2 that the servants of Pharaoh had, and 2, and when we get ready to go to the next portion of Mikha's, so you're gonna have several dreams that's enumerated. So Joseph had 3 dreams, and then they got 5 here, all together in the 5. But within the section where Joseph rise up to the top, it's gonna be 7 dreams that's gonna be part of Joseph's lifestyle. The 3 he had, and the 4 that he had to give interpretation to. What's interesting is that the book, the Sidra here, YAH, opens up with dream pretty much at the beginning, and it pretty much closed with dreams, and near the end of this particular portion. And like I said earlier, this particular section, YAH, is always around Hanukkah time. And you notice that, when we look at the Hanukkah and the Maccabean story, the first thing you have is civil war, mainly, before you have an outward war. You have brothers against brothers at the time. And this story here, you got siblings against siblings. And here in the season that we're in, we have, we gained a victory, but it started off with brothers against brothers. Before they had to fight the enemy without, we had to fight the enemy within. One of the things that during this particular season of Hanukkah is, like I already said, that it's always all our Shalosh Regalim, which is the pilgrimage time, Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot, about redemption, sanctification, rededication. And so I'm just going to give you a couple of verses out of Amos, the haftarah that goes along with this, which is, I find, also relates to the season in itself. Now, Amos, which is appropriate because he was a shepherd by trade and a keeper of a sycamore tree. So he's that was Amos, and I said earlier, it comes from the 2nd chapter, Amos, the 6th verse, and it goes to the 3rd chapter, 8th verse. But I just want to pick out a couple of lines in within the prophecy, and it says, and which is very interesting. So it says, and it's starting from the 6th verse, "Thus said the Lord, for 3 transgressions Israel, yea, for 4 I will not reverse it, because they sell the righteous for silver, the needy for a pair of shoes, that pant after the dust of the earth on the head of the poor, and turn aside the way of the humble." All right. This is one of the things we look at here, and it goes on to say, and a man and his father going to the same aid to profane my holy name, and they laid themselves down beside every altar, and upon clothes taken in pledge. So these are some of the things we have here when we look at it. that's related to the Sidra in this particular portion. But what was interesting is that the Creator look at us as the family, of the nation, and in the 3rd chapter it says, "Hear this the word of the Lord." Hear this that the Lord has spoken against you, O children of Israel, against the whole family which I brought up out of the land of Egypt, saying, "You only have I known of all the families of the earth. Therefore I will visit upon you all your iniquities." And it goes on about the two walk together, let's have been in agreement. All right, so what we have here is that we went down there somewhat as individuals, with Joseph starting off, then Jacob and his sons. But when God didn't send us down as a family, we went down under Jacob for Jacob's desire, and that began the part of the being in a strange land in servitude and our exile, self-imposed, so to speak. And then when we went down there at that particular time, but God brought us up as a family, as a nation. All right, so just what he's saying. So it's a lot of that ingratitude. And this particular prophet Amos, which is interesting, and he's talking to the northern kingdom also, which is under the jurisdiction of the sons of Joseph, to the tribe of Ephraim, which was the leading tribe in the northern kingdom, which they refer to as Israel. That though when he speak, Amos himself, they wanted to stop him from speaking. And I like the last part of this particular scripture, which I read in the 8th verse. And it says, the 8th verse, "The lion hath roared, who will not fear? The Lord God has spoken, who can but prophesy?" In other words, Amos was threatened to be hurt if he kept prophesying. He was threatened that his prophecy was treason. And that's when he said later on about what his real occupation was: a shepherd and a keeper of a sycamore tree. Prophecy is not something I do. But here, when he's talking this prophecy here, I said, all I can do is say what the Lord want me to say. That sounds like another guy who was a guy who wanted to curse Israel, but wasn't allowed to, which is Balaam. So now when and one of the things about, and this, we talk about dreams and visions for our prophecies, as opposed to, we talk about visions for our prophets, where dreams and stuff is with pretty much anybody, don't necessarily have to be a divine source. Balaam, which is a strange prophet that really hated us, and that was not an Israelite. He's the only one we read about that actually, as a non-Israelite, that went into a trance, like in a vision with his eyes open. Everybody else, we don't know. We know Balaam was a diviner, dealt with divination, but he talked to the true and living God. So the Creator raised up prophets amongst us and brought us out collectively in this Sidra, and we had an attitude of ingratitude. So we're gonna go straight to the Psalm, and the Psalm is 112, which is basically written in the acrostics. Now, when we look at Psalm 111, it talks about, "I will give thanks unto the Lord with my whole heart, and the counsel of the upright in the congregation, in the congregation. The works of the Lord are great." That's the Psalm 11. So in order for you to understand Psalm 112, you got to understand Psalm 111. And what is interesting is that Psalm 111 talks about the greatness of the Creator and all his powers and majesty. And now it focuses, so Psalm 111 focuses on the Creator, and here 112 focus on the righteous or the pious individual, a man. So if we were to make it a parallel, like I spoke earlier, Proverbs 31, it talks about Eshek Hayil, a virtuous woman from a woman's perspective. And here, 112 going to speak about, a virtuous man, so to speak. But there's two areas of the virtuous man that it speaks on when we read and look at it clearly. And like I said, the psalm is written in an acrostics, with the 10 verses, you have each of the alphabet being used, except in the 10th verse, you got it broken down with 3 letters, Resh, Shin, and Tav. Those 3 at the end, where it's broken down. But you're only going to see that if you, look at it, the Hebrew text itself, where, the main theme will start off with one of those letters. But when we focus on this here, we like to start from the beginning. Now, this is one of the areas here that's written out, and this one's pretty much a tribute to King David. Some say King David, with the hallelujah in itself. I just begin Psalm 112, first verse.
We're in the book of Psalms 112, verse 1. Hallelujah. Happy is the man that feareth Yehovah, that delighteth greatly in his commandments. His seed shall be mighty upon earth. The generation of the upright shall be blessed. Wealth and riches are in his house, and his merit endureth forever.
Okay. Hold on right there. Okay. Now, when we look at the opening verse, it uses Ashrei Ish, Yireh Adonai b'mitzvotai. All right. So, in other words, where's the man, is contented? Where the man is happy, and they use the word fear. Now, when you, it's not being about I'm afraid of the Creator. It's like, because when it says, we're going to show you how do you fear God, where you show your fear of God, where you show your awe of God. And a lot of times we look at, doing certain things. It's not, showing, we just doing this because maybe the fear of man, so to speak. But when it comes to the Creator, say we're supposed to be contented and happy and understanding of awe. So Ashrei itself, used a lot of times, it's changed with it's actually translated as happy, but it said but it used the word Ish for man, and said why man in Ish instead of Adam, like the prophecy a lot talk about Adam. It's focused on the actual character that a man must do outwardly to try to be a good man, and said that delighted greatly in his commandments. So in other words, fear, the man is only going to be contented and happy by doing what God required him to do. And you're doing it not because I'm afraid of him, but only because I want to get close to him. That's why I'm doing it. I honor you so much. I respect you so much that what could I do to please you? That's what the commandments is to us. I was speaking to a young man earlier today. When we give a sacrifice, we're not giving a sacrifice to be blessed. We're not doing a sacrifice, we're talking about I'm bribing God. We're giving a sacrifice to say, look, what do I need to do to try to get closer to you? Be in communion with you. I don't want to, I care and I respect you so much that I want to stay in your presence. That's what it describes this in first individual. But then it goes on and after it talk about even in his next generation, say his seed shall be mighty upon the earth. And the generation of the upright shall be blessed. All right. And then it goes on about material stuff. Wealth and riches are in his house, and his merit endureth forever. So that means right then and there. Do that mean you're gonna be super rich? Do that mean that you got your cupboards is overflowing? It's one thing when it says, David said, I've been young, and now I'm old. And in the 37th Psalm, and yet in all my days never have I seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. So what that possibly could mean? That if you're righteous, you see righteous people that's poor, don't have a lot. You know, they ain't wealthy. They might not have no food in their house. Is that the test for them? Or is that the test for you? Because you're not supposed to sit idly by the blood of your brother. Are you going to extend a hand to him? So when David says that, is he saying that God is just only God looking out for the individual? Or is other individuals that had that same divine care for the next human being that he decided to say, oh, I know you're hungry. I know you're without. I know you're destitute. I'm going to extend myself for you by handing you this or doing this for you. That's what David said. David said, I never seen it. The righteous forsaken nor seed begging bread. We know many times a person can be righteous, don't have any food. We know that even a great prophet had a house prepared for him, an upper room and everything that passed by. So it's not like he had a hotel stop all the way. And this was a special room that was prepared by this woman for him. And so therefore, what David could be saying, and we could look at it from this perspective, is that if I saw a righteous individual, not just even a wicked but a righteous individual that's looked like he's down and out, and he's trying to weather the storm, I'm gonna make sure it's comfortable where it's a gentle rain and not a storm on it. I'm gonna do what I can to deliver that individual. That's why David could say, I never seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread, because I'm not going to stand by and let that happen to anybody. And so God will move the next individual heart to do something for you because of that. And so, and that's why I talk about the merit and I talk about the generation that comes behind it. And it says, unto the upright, he shines as a light in the darkness, gracious and full of compassion and righteous. Pick up from the 5th verse.
You mean verse 4?
Verse 4? Well, I'm at the text, 5.
Verse 5?
Yeah. All right, just read 4. Gracious and full of compassion and righteous.
Verse 5. Well, is it with the man that dealeth graciously? Well, is it with the man that dealeth graciously and lendeth, that ordereth his affairs rightfully? For he shall never be moved, the righteous shall be had in everlasting remembrance. He shall not.
There. All right, before that. All right. That means a guy that knows it said, look here, I need to do something for some people over here. I know this is what it is. It said, well, is the man that dealeth graciously and lendeth, and that orders his affairs rightfully. In other words, you're not supposed to get where you destroy yourself. That's ludicrous. Sometimes in the churches, they say, just trust in God and give all you got. You can't do that. That's foolish. Because now, you're supposed to exercise a certain amount of wisdom here. And there's some letting you know that when you're doing good like that you got to be mindful, said, known to, like one of the Proverbs said, known to who you're doing good, and you got to know that it's going to do some good. You can't give out and say it ain't doing any good. You got to know it will do some good in this area here. That's positive and that's godly and is prosperous in that area there. And the person that's doing this is not doing this for, say, I'm getting a reward. I'm doing this, because I know automatically that it would do some good for somebody else more so than me at this time. And that's what it is. So that's the way we've got to look at those things, and that's the way we got to think of those things. All right. So here it is. The first guy is just a guy that say, all right, I want to make sure I do right by God. What's compelling upon me? So I'm doing this because I love the Creator. I want to be in communion with the Creator. So I'm going to follow his laws, statutes, and judgments the best I can by saying, all right, I want to make sure I don't want to get caught up in this problem here. I don't want to get caught up in that problem here. We have a psalm that says, the righteous shall grow like a palm tree. He shall flourish like the cedars of Lebanon. All right. 2 descriptions of a righteous individual. 1, a palm tree bear fruit. The cedar is all about itself. It just grow tall. That's all. Just grow tall. So here it is, a righteous man that said, I just want to keep commandments. I want to be pious. That's all I want to do. All right. Almost like a hermit. And then you got others that said, look, I want to not only keep God's commandments, but I want to be involved with other people to help them do better in the eyesight of God. That is the wealth that's being passed on, because I'm not just doing this for me. I want to help other people move closer to the Creator. You know, sometimes it just be words and sometimes it might be monetary, but the thing is that you now are thinking about not just yourself and your status with the Creator, but I'm saying, how can I make this individual better in the eyesight of God? That's what we should be all trying to do. So this, both of them is righteous. One is just saying, I don't do anything for us, cause no problems, and I do what God, you know, compelled me to do. And the other one go out his way to say, I'm gonna do what God say I can, you know, compel me to do. But I'm doing this to make sure that somebody else could do good in God's eyesight. So it's one thing to feed a guy that's destitute. It's one thing to clothe a guy that's destitute. But are you clothing him and feeding him so he could be more of a better godly individual? That's what the second guy is looking at. So it's talking about two types of righteous individual in this psalm here. But let's pick it up here and take it to the end.
Verse 7, it reads, he shall not be afraid of evil tidings. His heart is steadfast, trusting in Yehovah. His heart is established. He shall not be afraid until he gaze upon his adversaries. He hath scattered abroad, he hath given to the needy. His righteousness endureth forever. His horn shall be exalted in honor. The wicked shall...
Right there and there. All right. So that means right there and there, you know, the second guy that's talking about, he's very discreet about what he do. You know, it's different types of, you know, acts of what you call charity that you do for people. And it's around this time of year too, when you talk about rededication and stuff like that, and acts of kindness, because some of the acts of kindness that for Joseph, he's in a situation where his master's wife wanted him. If he thought about himself only, he would say, okay, you want me? See what we could do to get rid of this master, make my job even better. Disregard all the other areas, about morality. And what's interesting, and I had a discussion on it, but is that when Yehudah, he was redirected in his life. Excuse me. When he stepped down from his brothers, he was redirected in his life, and he met his daughter-in-law that he didn't know was his daughter-in-law, dressed in a attire of a harlot. And yet he was going from one purpose and diverted to a lower purpose. And then shame comes in. After he gives up to do what he would want to do, thinking this was, just 2 shifts passing in the night, and it's over with no repercussion, he sends a friend to pay off his debt. Can you imagine today an individual out there doing some unseemly stuff in an unsavory area, that he had some stuff that he left in collateral, and he was in parcel to that act, and left his personal stuff in the collateral spot and said, you go pay him off and get my stuff for me, because I don't want to be seen down there again. And then when the guy come back and say, I couldn't pay it off, and I know who to pay it off to. And you gonna say, we gonna be shamed? So these are some of the things here that we look at when we look at being turned off the course of a life. And he recognized that certain things, a certain morality is there. Whereas when Yehudah realized what was going on, there's a lot of stuff in that story that I didn't touch. One of the parts I didn't touch in the story is that He held court, had the verdict without the accused being there, and said, take her out and burn her. So that's current in the verdict. Because what he heard and not investigating. And she exemplified a certain type of piety, the sister Tamar in the story, because when she exemplified such a typical piety by sending off the pledge. I don't know how far she was, how quick things were going, but sending off her pledge, somebody she could trust, and say, by the man who owned these, am I with child? I'm dependent on the next individual integrity to save me. All right, I'm dependent on that integrity to save me. My motive was for one thing, and you assume another thing concerning me. And so he's actually the first one to actually say somebody's life, directly in that area there like that, because he didn't have to say, he could have possibly said that that's not mine, so who stole it? That's not true. But he admitted, fessed up, and never did that wrong no more. So that means he became what you call in Hebrew a Baal Teshuvah, a master of repentance, because he admit what he did, he made a change in his life, and never ever went back that way again. So when we look at that particular story, he elevated above his situation. And when you find out, so I'm looking at, I brought that out to show that when we read in the book, in the book, Abraham, kept all the commandments of God. That's what everybody like to, say, which is how many commandments did he told Noah? What was the laws he gave to Noah? What was the laws he gave to Abraham? To Adam. Adam had one. Don't eat from that tree. That's it. That's the only thing he had. Don't eat from that tree. God, in the matter of Sodom and Gomorrah, said, I know Abraham will command his household and teach him all the laws, that the commandments. So what commandments are you going to teach him? How many he had? So we have a natural ability to know what is right and what is wrong. We have a moral sense in our very being, in our very soul, to know whether we're doing something correct or we're doing something wrong. Because we don't have the laws that, the laws that we got later on at Mount Sinai and through the prophet Moses will prohibit a lot of stuff that the patriarchs did. So since the laws that we got would prohibit some of the things the patriarchs did, and one thing we say, okay, Abraham kept Shabbat. We like to say that. But when were we told to keep Shabbat? We was told to keep Shabbat only in reference to the manna. That's the first, as a nation, that we was told to observe Shabbat a certain way. When it comes to getting the manna, that's 30 days out of, 30 days from the Passover. Can you imagine that? That we got, a law of observing Shabbat that late in the game, and such as other laws. So we're going to finish this out, a couple more verses.
Verse 10.
All right.
The wicked shall see it and be vexed. He shall gnash with his teeth and melt away. The desire of the wicked shall perish. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. All right. So that means the only thing going to last is your marriage, your good name, what you do in life. Though Yehudah did what he did, we talk about it today in a good light. Though Yosef was put in a situation, we talk about it in a good light. When he brought about the evil report against his brothers, that didn't mean the report was true. He had an evil report brought upon him, and we know it wasn't true. So these are things we got to look at. When he couldn't see how much his brothers couldn't stand him, but yet he could see the heaviness in the individual being in prison. That's different and outside of just being in prison. So he started to mature somewhat. So you figure, as we get into the next story of Mikha's, Joseph spent a total of 12 years in prison. Ain't that something? 12 years he actually spent in prison not counting the first year he's with that. And we know that because okay. So the 10th verse of that song, the wicked shall see and be vexed, and he shall gnash with his teeth and melt away. The desire of the wicked shall perish. So what we have here is just strictly showing that, when we do something in the righteous manner, it's gonna last and and stand the test of time. And as we concluded, like I said earlier, that this here shows the portfolio of what it takes to be a righteous individual, a righteous man, and to talk about what a man should do. Now, and saying the woman's not supposed to be, righteous or anything like that, but you have a section in the Proverbs that's strictly focused on a virtuous woman. But in this particular section, it talks about two types of righteous individuals function in different areas, and to understand what area it is. One is basically, I'm just want to make sure I'm all right with the Creator, and I'm focused on the Creator, and pretty much almost, for a lack of a better term, just to be brief, like a hermit. I mean, and isolate themselves, or like a Nazarite, I should say, and just separate myself. All right. Whereas here it is that the other guy said, I want not just be good myself. I want to try to help somebody else to be better. So when we go over the Psalm again, and you cannot understand this Psalm 112 without looking at 111, which is also written in the acrostic. So they want you to first understand who we're talking about and who we're trying to work with and be in favor with, which is the Creator, and why we should be in favor with the Creator. And then it talks about what type of person, how you do it and function in that area, make yourself available. So with that, I hope you got some of what I said. And with that, I say Shalom Aleichem, and any mistakes of my own, and enjoy the rest of the festival.
Hallelujah. Torah by Nazik.
Right.
Thanking all of you once again for tuning in. May the Most High God bless you all. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom.
Let's get knowledge, wisdom, understanding. We'll do our standing, all praises to the Most High, His laws and commandments. The CHOKMAH BINAH here to push it through your speakers. Judgment, truth, and love should be coming from the leaders. Yeah, knowledge, wisdom, understanding. We'll do our standing, all praises to the Most High, His laws and commandments. The CHOKMAH BINAH here to push it through your speakers. Judgment, truth, and love should be coming from the leaders. Yeah.